Have you ever discovered something that changed your perspective about a loved one? How did it change your relationship? The late autumn light slanted low through the cafe's large front window, casting long, brittle shadows on the linoleum floor. A chill crept through a cracked open door, causing a ragged cluster of fallen leaves to scuttle like tiny creatures at Natalie's feet. She rubbed her hands together, tugging on the sleeves of her faded cardigan as she pushed inside the warm bubble of murmurs and clinks of coffee cups. Her auburn hair was loosely pinned up, strands escaping and brushing her pale, tired cheeks in the motion of reluctant hope. The soft hum of conversation swirled around her, punctuated by the hiss of the espresso machine and the sharp ring of the bell as the door swung again. Natalie's eyes caught movement near the corner table. There he was, her ex-husband, standing close with a woman brushed in sleek, confident black. The woman smiled, small and polished, eyes flicking briefly toward Natalie with a thin veil of acknowledgment, or was it dismissal? A heavy breath lodged in Natalie's chest. Each step forward felt as if she were wading deeper into freezing water. Her worn sneakers scuffed against the aged floor tiles as she approached, shoulders hunched, clutching a paperback to her chest like a shield. The woman's eyes met hers again, sharper this time, a quick flicker of superiority. Her ex's gaze was colder, the jaw tight, corners of the mouth flattened into a rehearsed neutrality. "Natalie," he said, voice low, almost detached. "I didn't expect to see you here." His words hung between them, awkward and brittle as the fallen leaves outside. She forced a small, uncertain smile. "I just came for coffee. Thought I'd drop by." Her voice trembled with an unsteady warmth she hadn't meant to reveal. He looked past her, nodding toward the woman. "This is Claire." "Claire, Natalie." The introduction was brief and stiff, the silence that followed stretching like an invisible barrier. Claire's smile never reached her eyes. Natalie sensed the judgment seeping through the polite facade. The cafe's ambient noise seemed to dim, her ears picking up only the rustle of her cardigan and the brittle crackle of leaves stirred by the wind outside. "So, how's everything?" Natalie ventured, trying to sound casually interested, as if her world hadn't recently fractured. Her ex's eyes flickered momentarily with something unspoken before hardening. "Busy. Things are different now." His clipped tone made the words sting sharper than intended. A bitter laugh rose in Natalie, swallowed quickly. Difference. That's what it was. She imagined the walls closing in behind her, the space between them growing colder, wider. The warmth she craved felt miles away, replaced by the icy prickle of invisibility. Claire shifted, the air around her crisp, untouchable. "We have a wedding coming up." "We're excited," she said, voice light but edged with irony. Natalie nodded, eyes dropping to the chipped paint on the table. The chipped paint, like her life, it had once been smooth, glossy, now cracked and dulled, hidden beneath layers of fading memories. She realized the woman's words weren't meant to invite her in but to quietly signal where she no longer belonged. "Congratulations," Natalie said, voice almost a whisper, carrying the weight of defeat. She glanced around the crowded cafe, suddenly suffocating. "I'm glad you're well," her ex added, standing abruptly. "I've got to go." Without waiting for a reply, he took Claire's hand, weaving through the chairs. Their retreat was swift. Polish edit left Natalie standing alone amid the murmur and clatter, an island of quiet humiliation. Her fingers unconsciously traced the edge of the paperback, the spine creased and soft from use. Outside, the wind pushed more leaves against the window, a dance of amber and rust swirling with the first bite of cold. She watched the door close behind them, carrying away a world she used to know, leaving her small, trembling, and utterly dismissed. Natalie stood still, swallowing the suffocating silence, feeling the creeping sting of rejection settle deep in her bones. Her breath, visible in the cooling air creeping into the cafe, puffed out in fragile clouds. Behind her eyes, faint sparks of hope flickered, but for now, they were dim, shadowed by the sharp sting of loss and the weight of a place she once called home now silently folded away. The door closed with a soft chime, muffling the warm hum of conversations and laughter behind her. Outside, the sky bruised into dusky purples and grays, the last lingering light slipping away under a blanket of heavy clouds. Natalie stepped onto the cracked pavement, the cold air biting through her thin cardigan, seeping into her skin like an unwelcome chill that echoed deeper than her body. Her feet carried her aimlessly, crunching over a carpet of russet and gold leaves that whispered beneath each hesitant step. The streets were nearly empty, the soft rustle of trees and the occasional bird call the only sounds that broke the heavy silence wrapping itself tight around her thoughts. Her breath formed fragile clouds, quick to vanish in the raw autumn air. Inside her, a storm roiled a swelling tide of emptiness, thickening the ache behind her eyes. She clutched the paperback book tighter, though the pages were already blurred with remembered tears. The paper's weight was a feeble anchor in a sea of drifting memories. In her mind's eye, faces flickered unbidden. Her daughter's hurried goodbye at the college dorm, her ex-husband's cold detachment this afternoon, the hollow sighs in the quiet house that once held laughter. Each memory stabbed sharper than the last, weaving a tapestry of loss she wore like a too-tight cloak. Natalie stopped beneath the skeletal arms of a leafless maple, its branches scratching the ink-black sky like desperate fingers. She pulled her cardigan closer, hands shaking faintly. The warmth of the cafe was gone, replaced by the raw reality of solitude. A voice whispered inside, faint but relentless, the whispered judgments, the invisible expectations weighing down on her from years of strained smiles and unspoken hurts. Not enough, it said. Too late to fix. Forgotten. Her eyes darted across the empty street, grateful for the darkness that masked the wetness pooling in her lashes. She swallowed hard, the lump in her throat stubborn and unyielding. Why am I still here? She murmured into the silence, voice cracking. No answer came. The street lamp nearby flickered, casting erratic shadows that stretched and curled like silent ghosts. Natalie's fingers traced the dry leaves gathered at her feet, turning brittle remnants over and over, as if searching for a sign, a grip on something, anything to steady her unraveling. She barely noticed the slow slide of the evening as light faded into darkness, the street lamps casting pools of hazy orange over damp sidewalks. Each breath she took grew colder, each heartbeat heavier, yet buried beneath the fatigue and despair was a faint ember of resolve almost imperceptible, like the shy glow of dawn on a cloudy day. Natalie pictured the cracks running through the broken frame on her mantelpiece at home, the one with the faded family photo. Each fracture mirrored her fractured bonds, but she held on to the fragile hope that some fragments could be mended, or at least reunited in a new form. Her hand reached instinctively to her neck, where her daughter's old pendant used to sit, now resting in a jewelry box untouched since that final goodbye. She missed the familiar weight of it, a silent connection now severed. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the rhythmic thump that no one else could hear but that tethered her dangerously close to giving up. Maybe I'm not invisible, she whispered to the night, a tremor of defiance breaking through her despair. A cold gust swept through the street, lifting a swirl of leaves that danced fiercely around her ankles. One leaf, bright red and stubborn against the dark, twirled directly into her path. She bent down and picked it up, its delicate veins vibrant against her palm. For a moment, Natalie let herself simply breathe in the earthy scent of the leaf's fading life, its resilience aching in the way it clung desperately to its place amidst the inevitable decay. It was a small symbol, a reminder that change was constant, and that letting go was part of survival. With a faint, almost imperceptible nod, Natalie folded the leaf inside the cover of her book and slipped it beneath her arm. It was a quiet act, but somewhere deep inside, a subtle shift unfurled a whisper of readiness to face what lay ahead, however uncertain. The streetlights flickered briefly, their glow warm against the cold night, as Natalie started walking again, her steps slower but steadier toward a home that felt emptier yet somehow less final than before. Her shadow stretched long and wavering behind her, merging with the restless swirl of autumn leaves blown by the wind, caught on the cusp between what was lost and what might still be found. Natalie's footsteps were uneven and slow as she crossed the threshold of her quiet home. The familiar creak of the wooden floor was both a comfort and a cruel reminder, the solitude etched into every corner, every sigh of the house. The amber glow of the setting sun filtered weakly through smudged windows, painting the walls with a warm light that felt distant from the cold heaviness settling in her chest. Her gaze fell on the cracked picture frame perched precariously on the mantelpiece. The glass was splintered, a palpable ruin of a family once whole. The photograph inside was faded, the smiles dulled by time, but the echo of those moments still whispered to her like fragments of a forgotten dream. She reached out instinctively, fingertips grazing the jagged edges, careful not to shatter what was left. A deep sigh escaped her lips. Tonight, the house felt heavier. The echoes of the cafe lingered in her mind, the coldness in her ex-husband's eyes, the calculated politeness of his new partner. The sting of rejection folded into the quiet loneliness that pressed in on her from every side, suffocating and unyielding. She went to the kitchen, hands trembling slightly as she poured water into a chipped ceramic bowl. The clink of ceramic breaking the silence was sharp, loud in the stillness. Before she could lift the glass to her lips, a soft noise drifted at the edge of her hearing, subtle and tentative. A gentle, worn whine. She stiffened, heart quickening. The sound came again, hesitant, pitiful. Natalie's eyes scanned the dim hallway leading to the front door. Her worn slippers padded cautiously toward the sound. She opened the door slightly, and there, huddled against the golden glow of the porch light, was a stray doga scruffy, thin figure shivering in the chill. Its coat was matted in places, ears trembling, eyes wide and pleading. On its worn leather collar hung a small tag, shiny despite the dog's ragged appearance. Natalie's breath caught as her eyes narrowed, scanning the thin metal plate until she made out the engraved name, Emily. Emily, her daughter's name. A delicate warmth unfurled inside her chest, mingling with the flood of surprise and confusion. She knelt, careful not to startle the fragile creature, extending a tentative hand. The dog's gaze held steady, a silent promise swirled within those deep, searching eyes. It was as if this small, forgotten life had been waiting, seeking a connection, a hand to hold, a heart to trust. Natalie's fingers brushed the collar again, feeling the roughness beneath her touch. The insignia wasn't just a name but a key to something deeper, an unexpected thread weaving between her fractured past and a possible future. This stray was no mere accident, but a sign, a quiet spark amid the shadows of a fraying world. She opened the door wider, the night air swirling around her as the dog tentatively stepped inside. The cooling wind tugged at loose strands of her auburn hair, swirling the dry leaves in restless circles across the porch steps. The dog's shaky breath mingled with the rustling choreography of autumn's detritus, a ballet of endings and beginnings. Natalie closed the door gently behind them, the faint slam reverberating like a whispered promise. In that moment, the fractured picture frame seemed a little less broken, the autumn leaves glimmered with a newfound hope, and the dog's soft, rhythmic breathing became an anchor in the quiet of her home. The quiet glow of a lamp cast warm pools of golden light in the room as the dog settled at her feet, its presence a soft pulse against the heavy weight of silence. The ache of loneliness hadn't evaporated, but beneath it stirred the fragile roots of possibility, the first tentative tendrils of solace and redemption. Natalie's tired eyes met the dog's steady gaze, and somewhere deep inside, a flicker ignited a fragile ember against the gathering night. The world outside whispered promises of change, and inside her, a slow breath, a silent vow, to hold on, to seek, to find connection in the unlikeliest places. And somewhere beyond the walls, beneath falling leaves and fading light, the story was only just beginning. The dawn broke gray and heavy over Natalie's suburban street, a dense mist clinging low to the fading autumn leaves. The soft whisper of the wind coaxed brittle branches to reach skyward, scraping the dull halo of streetlights that still flickered, reluctant to let go of the night. Inside her small kitchen, the worn wood table caught the slanting pale light, the mug of lukewarm tea trembling slightly in her hands. Natalie sat on the edge of a creaky chair, eyes tracing the slow, hesitant rise and fall of the stray resting at her feet. The dog's ragged breathing was a fragile rhythm, unsteady but alive. The collar gleamed faintly, Emily's name etched delicately, a tether between past and present that refused to unravel. She reached out, fingers trembling, to brush a gentle palm over the dog's rough muzzle. The creature flinched slightly but didn't pull away. It was the first touch of acceptance she had felt in weeks, a quiet spark glowing beneath layers of uncertainty. Gratitude, tentative and awkward, seeped in where despair had once resided. The day ahead felt heavy, weighted with invisible expectations. Natalie knew caring for this unexpected companion meant more effort than she had strength for feeding, cleaning. Vet visits, all foreign responsibilities now nodded with tender urgency. Yet she found herself willing to meet them, as if the dog's fragile presence might somehow stitch together her own frayed edges. She moved through the morning rituals with a new, fragile purpose. The dog followed, padded steps shuffled in rhythm, a soft whine occasionally breaking the silence. Mornings stretched with the awkward dance of trust, a tentative offering of kibble, a slow blink met with hopeful eyes. "Easy," she murmured one cloudy afternoon as the dog hesitated before the porch steps. Its large eyes mirrored a confusion and wariness that stirred something fierce and protective within her. The neighborhood, however, was less welcoming. Glances grazed her from behind cocooned scarves and winter caps, half sympathy, half whispered judgment. Questions hung in the air, unspoken but heavy. Neighbors murmured about the ragged dog prowling the streets, about the woman who had taken it in. At the local market, an overheard conversation tightened her chest. "Did you hear? That dog belongs to some guy new around town. Someone mysterious. Maybe trouble." Natalie's grip on her basket tightened. Her heart pounded against the familiar cage of doubt and fear. Was the dog truly tied to something or someone she couldn't yet understand? How much was she willing to venture into the unknown? Back home, she sat by the window as twilight bled molten gold through trees, casting soft shadows on the floor. The dog curled close, warmth radiating slowly, a balm she hadn't known she needed. Her eyes drifted to the collar once more, tracing the letters in her Minda, silent promise veiled in metal. Was it possible that through this fragile creature, a bridge might form? A connection to her daughter, to a mystery waiting to unravel. But buried beneath the fragile hope was the echo of unresolved questions. Who was this dog's owner? What piece of her daughter's life did it hold? And how far was she willing to go to uncover it? Outside, the wind picked up again, tossing leaves into the chaotic swirl of amber and rust, a dance of endings and uncertain beginnings. Natalie's hand rested softly on the dog's head, eyes reflecting the dimming light with something new dawning, a tentative courage to face the tangled threads of the past and the fragile footsteps toward an unknown future. The neighborhood coffee shop was quiet on a brittle, wind-blown afternoon, the murmur of voices filtered through dull autumn light. Natalie sat across from Mrs. Corbett, a sharp-eyed woman whose reputation for knowing everything that stirred in their suburban streets was as legendary as the fading vines clutching the brick walls outside. The stray dog, curled softly under the table, exhaled warm breaths, the faint rhythm of its presence grounding Natalie in ways she hadn't expected. Mrs. Corbett sipped her chamomile tea slowly, her gaze flickering between Natalie and the dog. "You know," she began, voice low and conspiratorial, "that pup's been seen prowling around with someone new in town. Not one of us, that's for sure. Some mister with eyes like he's hiding secrets. Folks whisper he's got a tie to your daughter. Strange business, that." Natalie's heart wrenched sharply. The idea of a mysterious figure entwined with her daughter was a jagged puzzle piece she wasn't ready to fit, yet here it was, pressed in her hands by whispers beyond the walls of her loneliness. Her fingers tightened on the frayed edge of her scarf, warmth ebbing from the cup into her clammy palms. "What kind of man?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper, desperate for clarity yet fearing the answer. Mrs. Corbett shrugged, eyes narrowing. "No one knows much, really. Just that he's been seen with the dog, often when your girl's away. Some odd hours, too." Natalie swallowed, a cold pit opening in her stomach. She'd believed that the departure to college was a clean severance, that the life her daughter led was separate from the one she knew. But the more she learned, the more the edges blurred and frayed, revealing a secret tapestry she had never glimpsed. The dog shifted softly, nudging her hand with a wet nose. A fragile thread of comfort and tether in a world that suddenly felt vast and unknowable. Leaving the warm cocoon of conversation, Natalie walked the leaf-strewn sidewalks, the brittle wind clawing at her thin coat. The cold gnawed at her resolve, but her eyes were set with steely, uncertain determination. She needed to understand to reclaim a sense of connection that wasn't slipping through her fingers like the fading trees shedding their vibrant coats. Days blurred into a collage of small, fragmented efforts. Baths drawn for the dog became moments to breathe. Walks through the cooling neighborhood were exercises in hope and fear intertwined. Each outing was punctuated by encounters that felt like glimmers of the world her daughter might inhabit, fleeting figures glimpsed in shop windows, hushed conversations in corners, and shadows lengthening beneath the amber streetlights. One evening, beneath the skeletal arms of the autumn trees, Natalie caught a glimpse of a tall figure watching from across the street, the stranger Mrs. Corbett had spoken of. The man's gaze met hers for a split second, eyes dark with something unreadable, before he retreated into the shadows. Natalie's breath hitched. Her heart pounded with a curious mixture of fear and hope, a question she was both eager and scared to answer. Back home, the air felt tighter, the silence heavier. The dog lay close by, restless but faithful. Natalie sat at the kitchen table, staring at the dog's collar, the name Emily engraved in silver catching the lamplight. She fumbled with the clasp and discovered a tiny hidden compartment sewn into the leather inside, a folded piece of paper, yellowed but carefully preserved. Hands trembling, Natalie unfolded it, the words dancing in faded ink. The letter was partially obscured, penned in familiar handwriting, her daughter's. The message spoke not just of love but of struggles and secrets, a plea wrapped in hope and apology. It was a link to a world she hadn't known, a voice she had longed to hear. Tears welled, blurring the warm lamplight and soft shadows, the quiet room swelling with unspoken emotions. The letter was a jagged lifeline, but also a mirror reflecting all the distance and pain that had wrapped itself around their family. The dog stirred, nuzzling her hand with quiet encouragement, as if understanding the weight of what lay unread and the journey still to come. Outside the window, a breeze picked up, swirling the fallen leaves into chaotic spirals, a restless dance echoing the turmoil inside. Natalie's resolve sharpened. Questions pressed in on her, heavy and demanding. How deep did the secrets run? What had her daughter left behind, and what awaited her if she ventured further? The quiet of the room settled around her like a fragile promise. Whatever fears haunted her, somehow they were tempered by the unexpected companionship at her feet and the fragile hope nestled in the dog's worn collar. A phone buzzed softly on the table, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered, breath caught on the edge of the ring. "Is this Natalie?" The voice was low, unfamiliar, edged with urgency. She gripped the phone tighter, the weight of the moment pressing down, a threshold beckoning. "Yes," she whispered. The voice paused, then said, "I think we need to talk." "It's about Emily." The voice on the phone was low, hesitant, as if burdened with the weight of secrets too heavy to carry. "It's Richie," the caller said briskly, the warmth of a younger man's urgency threading through the static. "I'm a friend of Emily's. I need to find her dog, and I think you have her." The line went silent for a moment, the ticking of the clock in Natalie's kitchen swelling louder than the uncertain words between them. The dog at her feet lifted its head, ears folding back slightly in alarm or curiosity. "Why are you looking for the dog?" Natalie asked carefully, her fingers still wrapped around the phone as if it were a lifeline. Richie's voice was low and steady, but the undercurrent of emotion trembled like a fragile cord. "There's a lot you don't know about Emily. I think she wanted you to have her. But there's more. I'm afraid she's in trouble." The words hit Natalie like a cold gust through an open window, seeping into her bones. The fragile hope that had been blooming around the dog, this quiet anchor to her fractured family, twisted into knots of worry and fear. Hours later, the street lamp outside flickered weakly, casting elongated shadows that danced across the peeling paint of her front porch. Richie stood on the doorstep when Natalie opened the door, a young man with earnest eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. The dog stirred between them, a living bridge of tentative connection. Richie held out a letter, folded carefully and worn from travel. "Emily asked me to give you this. She wanted you to know everything about her, about us." As Natalie's trembling fingers unfolded the letter, the golden lamplight caught the creases of faded ink that revealed truths she hadn't imagined. The words spilled out whispers of a secret life, hidden fears, and a loneliness her daughter had kept locked within, away from the world she had left behind. Within the letter, between lines of apology and hope, she read of a mysterious stranger, the same man that Mrs. Corbett had whispered about, someone who had offered love, danger, and escape all wrapped together. A suitor that Emily had hoped would bring her freedom, but whose shadows grew dark and tangled. Natalie's chest tightened, the broken picture frame on her mantelpiece replaying in her mind's eye, shards reflecting fractured family ties and the painful fragility of trust. The dog shifted, its eyes meeting hers with an almost human understanding, an unspoken offering of solace in the face of unraveling truths. The soft rustle of autumn leaves outside spiraled against the windowpane, a bittersweet symphony of change and letting go. Richie watched silently, as if shielding his own scars. "She's scared," he whispered. "But she wanted you to know, to be part of this even if it's dangerous." Natalie folded the letter slowly, the weight of revelation settling deep inside. The fear of losing her daughter to unknown paths was suffocating, yet beneath it all was a fierce, relentless love, a determination to bridge the widening gap. As Richie prepared to leave, Natalie felt the first fissure of resolve bloom inside her, the painful clarity that the woman she had known was only part of the story, and that to find her daughter fully, she would have to confront the shadows lurking beyond the familiar. The night deepened around them, the amber streetlight flickering as if signaling the uncertain road ahead. Leaves tumbled in restless spirals outside, mirroring the turmoil that churned within. Natalie's gaze settled on the dog once more, no longer just a stray, but a living emblem of unexpected connection and fragile hope. And somewhere within the quiet ache, beneath the fading glow, a quiet truth emerged: the story was far from over, and the path to redemption and understanding would demand everything she had left to give. The house was heavy with silence, oppressive as the thick fog that had settled over the neighborhood, muffling sound and swallowing light. Outside, autumn's last leaves clung weakly to skeletal branches, their brittle rustling a faint whisper against the chill air. The world seemed paused, or perhaps irrevocably slowed, weighted beneath an unseen force. Natalie sat alone in the dim living room, the flickering glow of a lone lamp casting long shadows that bent into the corners like silent watchers. Her auburn hair, usually tied loosely but always held with a trace of care, now hung loosely over tired eyes that bore hollow marks, dulled by countless sleepless nights. The stray dog, once a spark of warmth in the creeping darkness, lay curled at her feet, breathing shallow and slow, a fragile pulse in the quiet room. Her hands trembled as they gripped the edge of the broken picture frame on the mantelpiece, the fractured glass distorting the faces of a family that had dissolved into shards. Memories reflected back at her, fragmented and unkind. Laughter long past, whispered arguments swallowed by walls, promises made and broken. Words of the letter, fragile and fading, echoed in her mind like the reverberations of a distant storm. I'm scared. I don't want to lose you. There's so much I can't say. Yet all the words had landed only in silence that weighed heavier than disappointment. Her gaze drifted to the dog's collar, its worn leather taut and bearing the name she both treasured and feared. The fragile thread connecting her to her daughter felt taut beyond breaking. Outside, the night pressed against the windows with a cold breath, the muted street lamps flickering weakly as if in mourning. The oppressive dark seeped inside, a slow suffocation wrapping around Natalie's chest, tightening until breathing felt like a tide retreating. She tried to call her daughter, fingers hovering over the phone like hesitant memories, but the words caught in her throat. Each ring echoed against the void, unanswered. The hollow tone of the voicemail was a cruel reminder that the daughter she loved had slipped beyond reach. The quiet was punctuated only by the soft, uneven ticking of the old clock, as if counting down the moments lost. Natalie's world, once colored with hope and tentative courage, had shadowed into a grayscale of despair. The small victories of recent days now seemed like distant memories, blurred and fading. Her breath hitched. A single tear traced a slow path down her cheek, glinting briefly before falling unnoticed to the worn carpet. Time felt meaningless, the past and present melding into an endless ache. She closed her eyes and leaned her forehead against the fractured glass of the picture frame, the chill seeping into her skin a bitter echo of the fractures inside. The dog stirred briefly, nuzzling her hand, a whispered reminder of a bond still unbroken. Yet for Natalie, the walls of isolation were closing in, and the connection she craved felt like a fading echo lost beneath the thunderous silence. Outside, the storm finally broke. A cold rain began, tapping relentlessly against the windows, washing the last leaves into forgotten corners. And Natalie sat there, shrouded in shadow and rain, the weight of loss settling deep as the night swallowed everything she'd once held dear. The night deepened into an unfathomable blackness, pressing against the stained glass windows of Natalie's home like a living weight. The only sound was the low, steady tick of the old clock mounted on the wall, a cold metronome counting out time with a cruel precision. Beyond the faint glow filtering from dim street lamps, the wind howled through leafless trees, scattering brittle autumn leaves in restless, chaotic spirals against the window panes. Natalie sat curled in the kitchen's worn armchair, her body folding in on itself like fragile parchment, frayed at the edges. Her auburn hair hung loose, a tangled curtain shadowing the pale lines etched deeply across her face. The room was dim, lit only by the muted pulse of a small table lamp that cast long, twisting shadows doubling her solitude. Beside her, the Doggins, a symbol of unspoken hope, lay silent, curled tightly as if to keep the cold air at bay. Its ragged breathing was the only reminder of life in the suffocating quiet. Natalie's fingers grazed the dog's coarse fur absently, the touch mechanical, vacanther emptiness mirrored in the slow, steady rise and fall beneath her hand. The world beyond the walls felt distant, swallowed by darkness and forgotten dreams. The rain from the night before had settled into a thick frost now blanketing the ground outside. The crunch of ice-laced leaves under her feet echoed faintly in her memory, a brittle sound like all that had fractured inside. She looked down at the broken picture frame on the nearby table, the jagged edges shimmering faintly in the weak light. The faces within, blurred and obscured by shattered glass, were ghosts of a time she could no longer hold on to. The fracture, once small and repairable, now seemed a wide chasm, a tangible symbol of love fractured and lost. Her breath hitched with a soft sob she tried desperately to stifle, the sound swallowed by the thickening silence. Words she longed to speak caught in a choking "Natim, here, please," come back, collapsing into the hollow space around her. The dog stirred, lifting its head briefly to meet her eyes, those deep, liquid pools holding an unspoken question. But Natalie could offer no comfort. The well inside had run dry, a desert flooding with shadows. She rose unsteadily, the cold floor biting through the worn slippers as she moved toward the window. Frost clung to the glass like fragile lace, distorting the bleak landscape beyond. The streetlight flickered once, then blinked out, plunging the world into complete darkness. Natalie's reflection stared back at her, a woman hollowed by loss, her tired eyes ablaze with a silent surrender. The ghost of a smile flickered briefly, swallowed by the weight pressing heavy on her chest. The wind's desperate call seeped through the cracks of the window frame, whispering of things fled and futures lost. An empty chair sat across from her, a mute witness to a family broken and scattered like dried autumn leaves carried off by relentless gusts. She released a breath that trembled and shattered as the tears spilled anew, the room swallowing her quiet despair and folding it into its shadows. Time ceased to matter. There was only the vast, encompassing stillness, the sound of a world closing in around a heart unraveling. In this silent abyss, Natalie's last hold on hope frayed and slipped away, leaving behind an echoing void where love once lived. The night air was thick and still, pressing against the fragile windows of Natalie's home like a mournful shroud. A lone street lamp cast a pale, trembling circle of light on the porch, its glow fractured by the skeletal branches swaying gently in the cold autumn breeze. Inside, the shadows stretched long and soft, folding around Natalie like a heavy, familiar cloak. She sat hunched over the broken picture frame that had become both a relic and a wound on her mantelpiece. The jagged shards caught the golden lamplight, throwing fractured reflections onto the walls, a kaleidoscope of fragmented memories and broken promises. Her fingers traced a thin crack as if seeking to follow the path of her fractured heart. The dog lay near her feet, its breathing a steady whisper in the quiet room, a small pulse of warmth amid the encroaching cold. Its collar caught a stray beam of light, the silver nameplate gleaming faintly Emily. For a long minute, she said nothing, her eyes closing as the weight of loss and betrayal steeped deep into her bones. The world had contracted, shrunk down to this single room, this single breath. Then, a faint sound, a rustle from the dog's collar, caught her attention. Her eyes flickered open, and her fingers quivered as they reached to the familiar worn leather strap. It felt heavier tonight, carrying not just the dog's quiet presence but something else concealed in its folds. Carefully, she eased a small, hidden pocket open to find a folded piece of delicate paper, aged and yellowed. Her breath caught. Unfolding it with reverent slowness, she saw the scrawled handwriting, uneven, hesitant yet unmistakably her daughter's. The letter was riddled with pauses and faded smudges, but the raw emotion beneath each word bled through. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means I'm too scared to say it aloud. I'm sorry for the distance, for the secrets I kept. But I needed you to know I'm not lost. I'm just finding my way in a dark place. I love you. Always." There was more fragmented phrases, hints of pain, hints of hope, a whisper of understanding and love wrapped in fragile confessions. Tears welled, blurring her vision, but this time they were different, tears of aching relief mingled with a fragile glimmer of hope. For the first time in weeks, the cold inside her chest softened. She pressed the letter to her heart, the worn edges crinkling beneath her palm. Outside, the wind whispered through the dry autumn leaves, skittering them across the porch steps in a gentle, mournful dance. The broken glass on the mantelpiece caught a fleeting reflection, a shard of light glinting like a distant star in the growing dusk. Natalie inhaled deeply, feeling the fragile threads of connection tug at the frayed edges of her soul. The silence no longer felt absolute. It was filled instead with possibility. The dog lifted its head, eyes meeting hers with quiet understanding. A silent promise passed between them, a shared resilience forged in shadow and light. She straightened slowly, clutching the letter as if it were a lifeline. The path ahead was still uncertain, fraught with shadows and unanswered questions, but for the first time, the journey felt possible. A flicker of determination lit behind her tired eyes, small but undeniable, the first step toward reclaiming what was lost and discovering what might still be. The night held its breath. And in the fragile glow of fading lamplight, hope stirred anew. The first light of dawn seeped softly through the curtains, casting a warm amber glow across the room. The contrast from the oppressive shadows of the night was subtle but profound, like a gentle exhale after a long, suffocating hold. Natalie blinked awake, the ache in her shoulders easing as she slowly sat up, her breath slowly filling the quiet space. She reached for her old coffee mug on the windowsill, the ceramic warm in her hands, and looked out. The world outside was awakening, leaves shimmered gold and crimson, dancing lazily in the early breeze. That fragile, fleeting moment felt like a quiet whisper of renewal, a promise she's yet to fully believe in. Her eyes lingered on the collar of the stray dog, Emily, an unassuming reminder of the fragile connection she was beginning to nurture. The dog shifted, nudging her hand with a soft, tired lick, as if sensing her tentative shift in spirit. A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at her lips, the kind only someone who's been broken can understand. The room was bathed in gentle golden hues, the sharp edges of despair softened into a faint glow of hope. The shadows still laced the corners, dark and persistent, but they no longer held dominion. The broken picture frame on the mantel reflected the sun's first rays, fractured yet resilient, a silent metaphor for her own fractured world, slowly mending. She stood and moved toward the mirror, her reflection wavering between what had been and what might be. Her eyes, tired but alive, flickered with the embers of a new resolve. Perhaps, after all, change wasn't a grand explosion but a slow, deliberate awakening, finding light in small cracks, in the tiniest glimmers of possibility. Her fingers brushed the collar softly, feeling the worn leather beneath her fingertips with renewed tenderness. The letter from her daughter, hidden in the pocket, felt heavier tonight yet somehow less burdensome, infused now with silent promises of love and understanding. A gentle wind rattled the loose panes, stirring more leaves into restless spirals. The world outside was still changing, still unpredictable, yet she felt herself standing at the cusp of that transformation, fragile but real. It was as if the darkness was receding, revealing glimpses of a future she had almost given up on. Breathing in the crisp, leaf-scented air, she closed her eyes, briefly immersing herself in this fleeting calm, this delicate moment before the storm of uncertainty returned. The next steps were small, hesitant, but undeniably hers. With a quiet strength, Natalie reached down and gently squeezed the dog's paw, a silent vow passing between them. She knew the road ahead was still tangled and uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, she believed that hope, however fragile, could still take root. As she turned away from the window and poured her coffee, the rising sun cast a soft, amber glow over her face, an unsteady yet resolute smile emerging from the shadows. The small, quiet act of kindness, of hope, lingered in the air. Somewhere deep within her, she felt it, the first breath of life returning, a whisper that change was possible. And though the darkness still loomed, she stood ready to face whatever came, with her heart slowly unfolding like the first tender buds of spring in late autumn. The morning sun broke through the translucent curtains, bathing the room in a soft, golden hue that seemed almost too gentle for the storm of emotions brewing inside Natalie. With trembling hands, she reached for the collar once more, her fingers brushing the worn leather with reverence. Inside, the faint weight of the hidden letter agitated her, a fragile core of truth waiting to be unveiled. Today, she would not let fear or societal judgment silence her. With deliberate care, she unfastened the collar, feeling the cool metal against her palm as she dipped her fingers into the small, concealed pocket. The tiny envelope was pressed close, as if it carried her daughter's whisper directly to her soul. As she unfolded the letter, the lines scrawled hurriedly yet tenderly began to breathe life into her clouded world. "Mom, I've hidden this to protect you, to keep you from the shadows I'm trying to escape. I want you to know I'm safe, even if I'm far away. I love you more than words can say. Please don't forget that." For a moment, Natalie stared at the words, her vision blurred by tears. Her chest expanded with a fierce, trembling breath, an unstoppable surge of love and hope. She looked around her modest home, The familiar wall where family photos once hung, now silent witnesses to her unraveling and her rebuilding. She rose with newfound purpose. Her eyes, once dulled with despair, now shone with a resilient fire. The cold seeping through the window panes was no longer a suffocating darkness but a backdrop for her rising courage. Stepping outside, she took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air, feeling the faint crunch of dried leaves beneath her feet, each step a deliberate act of reclaiming her strength. In her neighborhood, whispers fluttered like autumn leaves, but today she would stand tall amidst the murmurs. She made her way to the town square, where the annual community gathering was underway. A modest stage flickered with string lights and the scent of pumpkin and cinnamon. She moved directly toward the gathering, her heart pounding but unbowed. Each person she encountered now saw not the woman broken by loss but one awakened by her own quiet resolve. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion. "I want to share something today. A piece of my story, a message I received from someone I cherish more than anything." The crowd hushed, eyes turning toward her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Unfolding the small, crumpled letter she had tucked in her pocket, she held it up as her voice grew clearer, stronger. "My daughter reminded me today that love isn't about proximity or societal expectations. It's about understanding, forgiveness, and resilience. We all have shadows, but it's in our courage to face them that true strength is born." Her words rippled through the crowd, bridging gaps of judgment and past pain. Faces softened, some nodding, others searching their own hearts. A communal silence settled, then erupted into gentle applause, a cautious but genuine acknowledgement of her brave act. For a moment, she closed her eyes, envisioning her daughter safe, loved, unseen by the world but present in her heart. As the applause faded, Natalie looked upward toward the branches framing the sky, the vibrant hues of dawn seeping through. The wind stirred, lifting a leaf into the air, surreal, weightless, and it hovered briefly, a silent symbol of possibility. In that suspended moment, Natalie realized that her act of courage had transformed her no longer a vessel of despair but a vessel of hope, her spirit quietly reborn amidst the first light. She stood quietly, a serene smile touching her lips, watching the leaf drift upward to hope, to renewal, to the life waiting beyond her fears. The first breath of her new chapter filled her lungs, fragile but fierce. The dawn broke with an iris of brilliant orange and gold spilling across the horizon, illuminating the quiet neighborhood with a warmth that seemed almost divine. The air was crisp but invigorating, a stark contrast to the chilling despair that once cloaked Natalie's soul. Today, her steps carried a resolve born from nights of silent suffering and days of tentative hope. Standing at her doorway, she looked out at the world anew, the trees shimmering with amber leaves, each leaf a symbol of change and renewal fluttering gently in the breeze. Her reflection in the glass was no longer the weary woman battered by loss but a figure reborn, eyes alight with unshakable purpose. In her hand, she held the Claret's worn leather, no longer just a remnant of the past, but a tangible link to her own inner strength. The letter, now fully deciphered, was tucked safely in her coat pocket, a testament to her courage and her unyielding connection to her daughter. She took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill her lungs, every inhale washing away the shadows of doubt, every exhale releasing the last burdens of grief and fear. Her posture was steady, her gaze fixed ahead, unafraid. The world might still carry its scars, society's judgments might still linger in the shadows. But she no longer carried those burdens within her core. Today, she would step forward not as a victim of circumstance, but as a custodian of her own destiny. Her voice, once trembling with uncertainty, now rang with conviction. "I am enough. I was always enough," she whispered, the words clear and unwavering. "Love is unending, and I will no longer hide from its truth." The moment felt sacred, like the sun cresting the horizon, illuminating everything she was and everything she would become. Her hand reached down softly to stroke the dog's head, the living symbol of her fight, her hope, her unbreakable love. The dog looked up, trusting and steadfast. Then, with a gentle but firm resolve, she turned and walked toward the street, her steps confident now, each one a beat in the rhythm of her awakening. The neighborhood stretched before her, fading doubts replaced by a blazing sense of justice and forgiveness. She paused on her porch, her eyes scanning the awakening world with a calm that only true transformation can bring. The leaves danced around her feet, swirling in silent homage to her rebirth. A soft smile played on her lips, one filled with warmth and unwavering purpose. Her shoulders straightened, her heart steady. This was her momentous sacred charge to honor her love, to stand her ground, and to finally embrace the power of her own story. And as the golden light bathed her in brilliance, she stood poised on the brink of the final act, ready to face whatever shadows or fears awaited, unshaken and free. The early morning light spilled softly through the sheer curtains, casting a tranquil glow that seemed to hush the remnants of chaos within the modest room. Outside, the trees swayed gently, their leaves a muted tapestry of amber and gold, reminders of the season's slow, inevitable letting go. Inside, Natalie sat cross-legged on the worn wooden floor, her hands resting loosely in her lap, eyes closed, breathing in a quiet serenity that had eluded her for so long. The house was still, save for the faint rustling of leaves against the windowpane and the distant call of the awakening neighborhood. A fragile peace settled over her, tender and almost reverent. Her face bore the soft imprint of nights of reflection and hard-won acceptance, eyes shimmering with the quiet glow of understanding. In her hand, she cradled the small, worn collar bearing her daughter's Nemean emblem of pain, hope, and profound transformation. The letter, hidden in the collar's secret pocket, waited silent, awaiting her courage to finally read the words that would complete this chapter of her journey. She lifted her gaze to the window, her eyes tracing the dance of sunlight on the leaves, a dance of change and patience, of seasons passing and new beginnings emerging from the shadows. The world outside was calm now, yet within her, currents of emotion swirled, melancholy mingling with gratitude, loss blending into love. A gentle smile curved her lips as she finally broke the silence, whispering softly to herself, "I see you now. I understand. I forgive." Her fingers brushed the collar one last time, feeling the subtle weight of her daughter's unspoken love, a love that had traveled through silence, secrets, and tears. That love, now palpable, was the foundation upon which she would rebuild her understanding of family, of herself. Standing slowly, she moved toward the small wooden table where a single vase held fresh autumn blooms, vivid, fragile, fleeting. She poured herself a glass of water, her movements measured and deliberate. Every step, every breath, was a quiet testament to her growth, the journey from despair to gentle acceptance. As she seated herself once more on the floor, the morning light enveloped her in a tender embrace. For the first time in a long while, she felt the soft, steady glow of peace and acceptance of the past, a hope for the future, woven together in silence and stillness. The leaves outside continued their slow dance, settling into the grounding silence of late autumn, a reflection of her soul, at last calm, at last free. The afternoon sun cast a gentle, golden glow across the small backyard where the leaves played in a slow, swirling dance. Natalie sat on a weathered bench, her hands resting softly on her lap, gazing peacefully at the scene before her. The stray dog, now a familiar and comforting presence, trotted playfully after a falling leaf, its tail wagging steadily, a symbol of innocence, unconditional love, and renewal. A deep breath, slow and steady, filled her lungs. She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to truly feel the depth of everything she had uncovered, truths hidden beneath layers of pain, love, fear, and forgiveness. The fractured picture frame, once a haunting reminder of broken ties, was now a testament to resilience and healing. Her mind drifted back to that letter, the final, unspoken message from her daughter, words stitched with love and understanding, her voice echoing softly inside her heart, breaking the walls of doubt and regret. Tears welled up, warm and honest, tracing silent paths down her face. Not tears of sorrow, but of liberation. The light shifted slowly, embracing her with a tender warmth, as if the universe itself was blessing this moment of clarity. The old wounds, once a painful ache, now felt like distant storms that had finally passed, marks of growth, scars of strength. She reached out, gently running her fingers over the dog's soft fur, marveling at how unconditional that love was, so pure, so steadfast. A faint smile blossomed, fragile but genuine. She whispered softly, "Finally, I understand." Her voice was husky with emotion, but filled with peace. The world felt Renee with each breath, each beat of her heart, genuine and unshackled. Her gaze settled on the horizon, where the sky met the earth in a seamless blend of amber and soft blue, symbolizing the unity of her past pain and future hope. In that quiet, profound moment, she saw herself reflected in the gentle eyes of the Doga mirror of her own journey to forgiveness and love. The shadows of the broken past had faded, replaced by a luminous truth: she was enough. She inhaled deeply, her heart swelling with a gentle, unstoppable love. Her expression was a silent ode to the resilience of the human spirit, to the unbreakable bonds of family, and to her own capacity for renewal. As the wind finally stilled, leaving only the whisper of leaves and the beating of her own heart, she leaned back into the bench, a calm smile touching her lips. Her eyes lifted to the vast, infinite sky, and in that gaze shimmered the promise of peace, an unspoken vow to cherish each moment, to forgive the past, and to embrace the new life awaiting her, one gentle step at a time. The sky had dissolved into a tapestry of soft, lavender hues as the evening settled over the quiet neighborhood. Night settled gently, but inside Natalie's home, a different kind of peace bloomed, a quiet, unwavering stillness born from acceptance. The stray dog, now curled in her lap, was a gentle weight against Hera, living symbol of unconditional love that had quietly fetched her back from despair. She sat near the window, watching the leaves drift lazily in the cool air, each one a delicate reminder of change and surrender. The fractured picture frame on the mantel was no longer a cold reminder of broken ties, but a silent testament to resilience, edges smoothed over time, memories reshaped, wounds healing into a calm surface. Her hands rested softly on her knee. She looked outward but saw inward an expansion of her soul, a deep understanding that love is not about control, nor about societal expectations, but about presence, connection, and forgiveness. A gentle breath filled her lungs, slow and deep, tasting the air of the present, no longer a hostage to the past. Her eyes, tired but now shimmering with a gentle glow, held a new quiet hope. She was no longer the woman who had been defined by loss, but one who had embraced her pain as part of her story, her journey, and had found beauty in its imperfect pages. The dog, sensing her calm, leaned into her, a silent pledge of loyalty and love. Her fingertips softly traced the collar, now just a token of her daughter's quiet courage, a love that had survived hiding, silence, and tears, and finally blossomed into clarity. In the silence, her heart whispered gratitude. The evening breeze stirred the leaves outside, their gentle fall echoing a lyrical farewell to struggles past, and a tender welcome to the serenity that lay ahead. The moment was tender and infinite, a pause before the dawn of a life her life reclaimed. With one last glance at the horizon, she leaned back, releasing all that was beyond her control, trusting instead in her own resilience, her unspoken faith. Her eyes fell closed, her spirit soaring quietly into a dawn of unheard melodies and unseen hopes. The scene faded softly into the surrounding hushed beauty of dusk, the leaves still turning, the stars shyly peeking out, bearing silent witness to the gentle, everlasting peace within her. How would you react to such a startling discovery? Share your thoughts below.